name is Bridget Doyle, and I'm the Associate Director here at the University of Illinois College of Medicine Admissions Office. And I am here with my colleagues, not just from admissions, but from our Office of International Services to talk about how to apply to our school as international students. And you probably have a lot of questions about visas. We also have a student panel at the end because you probably have questions about what it's like to live here on campus as an international student and transition to life in the US if you aren't here already. So we'll go over a few housekeeping reminders on our next slide here. This is a webinar, as you probably heard once you entered. We will be recording it and we're going to make it available to you in about a week or so. And since it's a Zoom webinar platform, all of our participants have been muted and you're off camera. We are covering a lot of content and we're getting specific in some areas, including addressing a lot of the questions that you submitted to us when you registered. So what I'm going to ask is that if you have questions, write it down or type it out in a different Word doc. If it doesn't get answered in our webinar, at the very end, we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes to go over live questions. And I'll have you use that Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And that'll allow us to keep our questions and answers organized as opposed to the chat feature where things can kind of get lost. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Miri to introduce the international experience while you're applying to us.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Good evening, everyone. I'm Layla Miri, the Assistant Dean for Admissions and Recruitment, and really excited to be here with you tonight to talk a little bit about applications for international students, which may not be that common, right, in the application process. So I want to start our discussion with you tonight with our mission. Our mission is to advance health for everyone through outstanding education, research, clinical care, and social responsibility. And the reason that I share the mission with you is because I want you to know that we are a completely mission-driven medical school, and everything that we do and every step that we take as far as we're concerned is guided by this mission, which includes acceptance of students into our program. And so when a student is mission aligned for us, we invite them to submit an application to us. That's why we are open to accepting applications from international students. Very briefly, I want to remind you of the AAMC Holistic Review toolkit that we have, the experiences, attributes, and metrics. This feeds into the mission that we have for the College of Medicine, and the review of applicants, review of qualifications for students to join our program is really embedded in a model that balances experiences that you bring to the table, the attributes that you bring to the profession, and as well as your ability to handle rigorous science curriculum and standardized testing. So those are the things that we're going to look for in students who join our institution. I want to briefly share with you a high-level demographic description of the current students that we have in our first year class. And of specific note is what you see highlighted in yellow are the international students that we have as part of our first year cohort this year. We actually have 14 students that are international, and they hail from the countries that you see on this slide. So it's important for me to share with you that despite being a public medical school, in the US, we don't have any state mandated restrictions or limitations on the number of out-of-state students that we're able to accept. So you might be familiar with other state and public institutions that are only able to admit between 5 to 15%. We don't have any restrictions. And as you can see on this slide, 30% of our first year class this year is from out of state, and included in that number obviously are the students that we have from outside who are nationals of countries other than the United States. Application basics for you applying to us are going to be basically the same as the students that are domestic. And we're not going to spend time today talking about the application process in general. What you see on this slide are the things that we invite and encourage everyone to think about. We have several webinars that we have shared previously, and I know at some point Bridget's going to drop into the chat the link to those webinars for you as well. So please take advantage of that resource to get information about the admissions process. Really what we're here to share with you today are the unique requirements that are in place for international students outside of the standard application processes that you would think about as you're applying for admission to medical school. So let's talk about those unique requirements and see what they might be. So I'm going to differentiate here between Canadian applicants and non-Canadian applicants because the setup for the application itself and eligibility for application depends on whether you're a Canadian citizen or not for us, okay? So if a student is a Canadian applicant who is studying in the US or is a Canadian applicant residing in Canada, you will not need a visa to apply to us. So one of the conditions for consideration would not be having a visa. Now, for those of you that have applied to us and you are Canadian and you've received reminder emails from us to upload international documentation, that's just a automated system process and we manually do go through the system. You are not required to upload any international documentation at this stage, right? Also, one of the requirements that we do have for our non-domestic applicants is at least 32 credit hours completed at a US degree granting institution. Because the AAMC, the AMCAS application, evaluates Canadian transcripts similarly to US granted transcripts in terms of submitting the degree, giving us the credit hours, providing evaluations to us, we would not need to see US earned credit hours from individuals who are Canadian studying in Canada, and even if you're non-Canadian studying in Canada. So a Canadian transcript will be received by AMCAS and therefore by us as a US granted transcript. And so you don't have to worry about earning through 32 credit hours here in the US, okay? And then through the admissions process, we will connect you to our Office of International Services for requirements that they would have for you to be able to pursue the MD degree here in the US. Moving on to our unique requirements for non-Canadian applicants. Now, if you're a non-Canadian applicant and you're residing in the US, so your country of citizenship is anything other than the US or Canada, you will have to have legal status in the US in order to apply to us, okay? So that will be the documentation that we'll require from you. We will need for you to upload into our system proof that you are residing in the United States legally, whatever that status might be, okay? If you have completed a degree outside of the US, then it'll be necessary, and the degree wasn't completed in Canada, nor was it completed in, let's say, Australia or England or a country that the national language is English, okay? You will need to complete 32 credits here in the US, okay? Now, for those of you that have, as you know, we do require a bachelor's degree for admission. So you will need to have your bachelor's degree evaluated by WES and sent to us directly. So the bachelor's degree must be earned, but the bachelor's degree doesn't necessarily need to be earned in the US. If it's translated and found equivalent to a US bachelor's degree, that will be fine as far as we're concerned, okay? So now talking about non-Canadian applicants who are outside of the US, okay? So that would suggest that you have earned a bachelor's degree not in the United States. Then we will need you to complete 32 credits or more from a US university, right? You will not need a visa to apply to us because you're not residing in the US. Obviously, we will consider your application. And then when you are admitted, then you'll work with our Office of International Services to complete the visa documentation so that you can pursue your degree here fully with us. So that's going to be my brief introduction on the unique requirements that we have for our international students. As Bridget mentioned, we'll have time for Q&A later on in the session. I'll hand it back to Bridget so you can hear from our OIS team.
Thank you, Dr. Amiri. I dropped some useful links in the chat for you, but I'll now turn it over to our team in the Office of International Services to come on stage.
right, hi everyone. We're going to go ahead and share screen here. And Bridget, it looks like I am not able or authorized to share my screen just yet.
All right, let me fix that for you.
Okay, great. Let's see. Okay, hello everyone. We're going to give you a brief presentation here from the Office of International Services. I and my colleague Anna will introduce ourselves in just a moment. We are the immigration advisors here at UIC. So Anna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Anna Hoban, and I'm an assistant director in the Office of International Services. And I work predominantly with our outreach, communications, programming, and a lot with our orientation programs.
Great. And again, I'm Kathleen Pender. I oversee our incoming student advising team. So that would be all of you, students who are prospective, thinking about coming to UIC, or admitted and planning to come. I also work with all of our incoming MD international students. So should you end up coming to UIC, you and I will be in contact. So we'll go ahead here and get started. And Anna, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah. So just a quick introduction to who we are and when and how you might begin working with us in the Office of International Services. So like I said, we're OIS, that's the short name for our office, and we serve the entire UIC international community. And that's about 4,000 plus international students, but we also have visiting scholars and researchers in the J exchange visitor category, employees, so some of the faculty, perhaps some of the faculty and doctors and researchers you may work with are international, and other folks on campus who come from outside the United States. We help them with immigration advising and services, so applying for your initial visa to study or work or research at UIC, understanding how to maintain your status, applying for benefits should that be applicable to you and your status, and then any post-graduation work authorizations, again, should that be applicable and available to you. We also do orientation and arrival support. So one of the things we'll talk about later are some things like this, virtual meetups before arriving in the United States or before beginning your degree. We'll come together as newly admitted students or student applicants and talk about some of the questions common to international students, like housing, safety, differences in registering for classes, although with medical students that might be quite different. And lately, a lot of updates about vaccine requirements and quarantine requirements as they apply to international travelers and visitors to the United States. And then once you're here, we do a lot of programming. So community and cultural programming, we gather international students and scholars and visitors to explore Chicago together, to explore intercultural communication, and to create social spaces for all of us to connect. And we do training and education, a lot of workshops. We just did one, a fun workshop on how to adjust to Midwestern winters. So if you're not from the Midwest United States, or you're coming from a country or culture where cold weather and snow is not common, we can help you out and how to adjust to that very real presence here in Chicago. And then lastly, advocacy. We do a lot of advocacy for our community, making sure different departments and all aspects of the university understand the needs of the international community, and outreach such as this. So connecting dots for our student applicants and our students once they're on campus. So we're located on our Chicago campus, although we do serve students in Rockford and Peoria. So we will work with you no matter where you are on the UIC campus, but our physical office is located in Chicago in the Student Services Building, which you can see the address right there. We're kind of nestled in the middle of the East and West campuses. You see our office hours, but we do individual advising by appointment. You schedule that 24 hours in advance. And you can come in and visit us to pick up documents. We answer a lot of emails. So there's lots of ways to connect with us, both when you're a student applicant and then once you are on campus. So like I said, your relationship with OIS officially begins after admission. that's when we start working with you on the documentation, and that's what Kathleen is going to talk about in just a moment. But we will be with you throughout your entire program and time at UIC, and perhaps even beyond if you do some post-graduation work in the United States. So that's an introduction to who we are, but I'll turn it over to Kathleen to talk more details about the immigration aspects.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anna. Okay, so talking a little bit about that transition, what happens after you have been admitted to UIC? So once you have been admitted, that admission is confirmed, then we will work with you to complete the necessary steps in the immigration system for attendance. So I've broken down here kind of 3 different categories of international students who would require UIC sponsorship for an F1 visa. So you may fit into any of these 3 categories. You may be residing outside of the United States. You may be inside the United States in active F1 status. Maybe you've been attending another university in the United States, or you're on post-completion OPT currently, or you may be in the United States in another non-immigrant status that doesn't permit full-time study. One of these 3 categories, you would have to work with our office after you've been admitted. So if you are currently in the United States in a status that does allow full-time study, you may not need to change your status to F1 student. If that applies to you, feel free to reach out to us and we can talk through your specific situation with you and make sure that you are okay to study in your current status and don't need to change status. That's all very case by case, so we can talk that through with you. Okay, so if you've determined that you do require F1 sponsorship, you need an F1 student visa to attend UIC. If you're outside of, if you're outside of the United States, the Form I-20 is going to allow you to initiate your application for an F1 student visa from a US embassy or consulate, ideally in your home country. If you are living in a third country, you're not in the United States, you're not in your home country, you're in a third country, maybe studying, and you need to apply for an F1 visa to come to the United States, reach out to us and let us talk that process through with you. Sometimes it makes sense to return to your home country to complete that F1 visa application. Sometimes it may make sense for you to apply for that visa where you're currently located, but that can get a little bit complicated. So that's something we can talk through with you one-on-one. I made a note here, if you are a Canadian citizen, you do need to obtain a Form I-20 from UIC, but you're not required to obtain that F1 visa stamp from the embassy or consulate. You just need the Form I-20 to travel to the United States in F1 status. If you're currently in the United States with active F1 status, so you're currently studying at another institution in the United States, or you're on post-completion OPT, we're going to issue you a transfer I-20, which continues your existing F1 status. Okay. And then finally, if you're inside the United States in another status and that status does not permit you to study full time, contact us so we can walk you through the change of status process. There's a couple different options for changing your status to F1, and which one will be best for you is going to depend on your personal circumstances. So if that applies to you, our email address is there. Please reach out to us and we'll be happy to guide you through that process. Okay. Upon admission, you will be provided with a document that gives you step-by-step instructions on how to submit required documents to our secure electronic Dropbox. So there are certain documents I'm going to walk through on the next slide that we need to gather from you in order to create that Form I-20, and you'll receive the instructions on how to do that once you're admitted to UIC. Okay, that form is also going to have links to all of the required forms that I'm going to mention on the next slide. So those required documents that we will need from you, and again, we do not need any of these until you have been admitted to UIC and you're planning to come to UIC. We'll collect these from you to create that Form I-20. So that's going to be a copy of the biographic page of your passport, a completed declaration and certification of finances form. Again, you'll receive the link to that form upon admission, but that form is going to gather your biographic information and you'll confirm how you're going to fund your studies. The third item that we'll need from you is evidence of funding for the first year of your studies. You're not actually giving our office any money. We're just confirming that the funds are available. And I'll talk about this a little bit more on the next slide. If you're transferring an existing F1 record to UIC, so you're currently in the United States in F1 status, you can transfer that right on over to UIC. You'll have to submit a completed transfer verification form that will be signed by your current school. And again, upon admission, you would receive the link to that form. If you'll have any dependents accompany you, for immigration purposes, a dependent is a spouse or an unmarried child under 21 years old, then we'll also need a copy of the biographic page of each dependent's passport. Okay, so going back to that funding requirement, item 3 on the previous slide, US immigration regulations require that individuals coming to the United States or already in the United States in F1 status show evidence of funding for the first academic year of your studies. So for this semester, for fall 2021, the required amount that students had to show was $109,399 listed here. That amount includes your estimated tuition and fees, estimated living expenses, and estimated cost of books. That is the same for all international students who are pursuing F1 status for the MD program. Everyone has to show that same amount. Again, you're not giving that money to OIS. We're just confirming that it will be available. US immigration needs to confirm that if a student comes in F1 status, that they have the means to support themselves for that first year. That evidence of funding can come from a whole bunch of different sources. The funds just must be from a source that is liquid, meaning the funds can be withdrawn. So that may be a checking or savings account. It could be student loans. It can come from many, many different sources. It can also come from different sources combined together. It doesn't have to be all one source. We cannot accept funding sources that are not liquid, such as investment accounts or retirement accounts, unless you have some sort of written confirmation that those funds can be taken out for study. So hopefully that gives you a general sense of that evidence of funding requirement. Okay, so once you have submitted all of those documents, what happens next? So going back a little bit, so you've been admitted, you've gone ahead and provided the documents for I-20 issuance. Within 5 business days, we will issue that Form I-20 to you. If you're a transfer student, so you're transferring an existing F1 record to UIC, at this stage, you're done for now. There's nothing else that you need to do until you arrive on campus for the fall semester, and then you'll complete our check-in process. If you are outside the United States, once you've received that I-20, you can do a couple of things. You can pay the I-901 SEVIS fee. That's a government fee that anyone in F, J, or M status is required to pay. The SEVIS stands for the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. It's the government database that hosts your F1 record. So that fee is paying for the maintenance of that record. Then you can go ahead and schedule your F1 visa interview at a US embassy or consulate in your home country. Like I said, occasionally it makes sense for you to maybe apply in a different country, but reach out to us if that's your plan so we can just talk that through with you. And lastly, if you need to change your status in the United States, send us an email so that we can walk you through that process as well. Lastly, I put a note here at the bottom that if you have applied to and been admitted to more than one school, before you initiate that application for your F1 visa, make sure that you have decided which institution you are going to attend. It's important because the name of the school that is on your I-20 has to match the name that's printed on your visa. So you need to make that decision before you go ahead and apply for your F1 visa. All right, I will go ahead then and turn it back over to Anna for a moment.
Great. So like I mentioned in the beginning, there are ways to connect with our office. One of them are our Countdown to UIC emails. This is an email campaign that goes out to admitted students, international students preparing for arrival. So we go over pre-arrival content and event invitations. So those virtual new international student meetups I mentioned would be announced through our countdown to UIC emails. So one tip is to add this email account that's newintel@uic.edu. This is our kind of our specialized email account for new students. We have a team that answers questions. So add that email to your contact list and your primary inbox to make sure you're getting those messages from the countdown to UIC. And then, like I said, we do our OAS advisor and new international student meetups. You're welcome to join those as you like. We share updates from campus. There have been a lot lately due to COVID-19. And like I said, the vaccination requirements and quarantine requirements. In fact, in December, we're going to have Dr. Susan Bleasdale, one of the primary leaders in UIC's response to COVID-19, is going to be joining us and talking to the international community about the most recent and current requirements for quarantine and all of that. So we're really excited to have Dr. Bleasdale with us. And then international student orientation. We host that beginning of each semester and term that international students begin in August 2022. It's hard to believe, but we will be hosting that for our fall admits and likely inviting our College of Medicine new students to those events. So that's where we go over maintaining your status. We go over health insurance, US culture, academic integrity, budgeting, safety, all sorts of immediate arrival concerns for new internationals at UIC and in the United States. And there's some social programming around there as well. Like we typically have a welcome back barbecue for the entire international community. In the past, pre-COVID, we'd hold it over at the UIC Forum, which is one of the biggest spaces on campus. And we'd have like 1,000 members of our community come and enjoy barbecue, burgers and hot dogs and all that kind of stuff. The UIC band would come. It's a really fun event. So hopefully we'll be able to do that this year in 2022 and invite you all to join us. And then it continues with programming. So like I said, we do cultural excursions, Thanksgiving dinner. We're actually doing our Thanksgiving dinner this year. We're really excited. Next week, we'll be sharing a meal with the entire international community of typical Thanksgiving food, the turkey, the pumpkin pie, all of that. It's a time for us to come together as a community and just give thanks and reflect and enjoy US holiday tradition together. And so other things you can see on the slides that we do along with workshops. So another note to add ois@uic.edu to your contact list and primary inbox. So that's our main email address. You may get messages from us there. So it's really important that we're a safe sender in your inbox so you don't miss anything like a great invitation to Thanksgiving dinner once you're a student. So yeah, lots of ways to connect with us. We have a really vibrant international community here on campus. So we'd be excited if you would consider joining us and becoming involved. And I know we're going to hear from a couple of current members of the community in a few moments. So excited to hear from them. Thank you. And yeah, those are the two email addresses. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, I know we're gonna have a little bit of time at the end for questions. If we're not able to answer your question today, or if you have a really personal case-specific question, please reach out to us. We want to hear from you. We'd be happy to talk things through with you. So you have our email address there, and don't hesitate to reach out. We will go ahead then and, oh, go ahead,
Just
Anna.
to clarify, for the College of Medicine students, is New Intel the correct email address to use for questions about visa status and all that, or?
Yep, that would be perfect. It's most likely going to get forwarded to me. You'll probably end up hearing from me, but that's a great place to start. Yes.
Okay, I'll pop that in the chat for everybody.
All right, and we'll go ahead then and turn it back over to Bridget.
Thank you so much. I look forward to the barbecues and all the in-person events we might be able to have. If you still have questions, keep writing them down. We're going to answer all of your questions at the end. But now that we've gone into a lot of the administrative details, I want to invite two of our international students to come on stage. So we have Cheyenne and Anj. And I want to start first by having each of our students introduce themselves, their year and their country of origin, and also to talk a little bit about their experiences being an international student, whether it's getting housing, opening up a bank account, which always seems to be a big deal when you move to a different country. And if you could talk about any of the academic resources that you've experienced, whether it's mental health services or maybe just talk about, being able to collaborate or use other resources on campus. I'll have our students now unmute their cameras and come on stage.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shayan Asai, and I've been very fortunate to be a second-year student at UIC as a Canadian international student. So I went to Queen's University in Canada for my undergraduate in biochemistry, and I did my master's in aging and health. And today I want to talk mostly about my experience moving to the US and transitioning to life at UIC. So I'll touch about my experience with housing, academic life at UIC, and I'm really going to highlight the amazing collaborative environment that UIC fosters. So first thing I was concerned about when moving to the US was housing. How do I start looking for housing? How do I look for roommates? So there was a lot of uncertainty at first, but the class board at UIC, College of Medicine, which is pretty much like the student council, set up a lot of events prior to the beginning of the school year for admitted students to meet each other. So this was a great opportunity to meet friends, to meet new people and make friends, get in touch with students and find out who you'd be compatible as a roommate. So that was a great experience. Upper year students who usually are finishing up their medical education and they're moving out, we have like a big group chat and people usually post their housing and put up their lease for other students to take on. And that's how I was able to secure housing with 2 other medical students as roommates. So it was a very seamless and easy experience, especially with the help of our class board and student council. And there was a lot of help from other students. Next up, I was a little concerned about bank accounts and setting up my phone plan as a Canadian. But the process again was very simple for me. With my F1 visa, I was able to open up a bank account. And this is probably a good point to mention the Big Sib program that we have set up. So the Sibling Program is basically how you are able to get mentorship from upper year students. So you're paired with an upper year student and they can guide you through everything from day 1 until the day you graduate. So this year, as a second year medical student, I was assigned 2 little brothers from Canada. And I was able to meet with them on a regular basis and help them with everything from securing housing and succeeding in their academics. And during this time, we've naturally grown very close to each other. And we'll be together during the rest of our time at UIC. And while I was a first year student, I had a big brother who was able to help me through a lot of these things. Almost all the students, even the domestic students, participate in this sibling program so that incoming students essentially have the smoothest transition to UIC. Next up was academics. Medical school is challenging, but at UIC, there's so many resources to make sure that everybody succeeds. And every student wants everyone else to succeed as well at UIC. We want our school to be the best in the US. So outside of class resources and what the faculty offers, there were a lot of other programs that helped me really stand out and reach my potential. One of these programs is the Pep Tutor Program. So if you're struggling with a topic, and you need some extra help outside of the classroom, you can actually sign up to receive one-on-one tutoring sessions from an upper year student. It's important to mention that all these resources, they're available for free, so there's no cost to them. Outside of that, upper year students, as part of the PEP program, actually organize review sessions. So during, when it's close to exam time or at the end of the block or middle of the block, they have review sessions where they go over everything and talk about, things that we should be focusing more on in our curriculum. And if you're struggling with how to specifically study, the College of Medicine has learning specialists. These are professional individuals who specialize in nothing else but the most efficient and effective method to study. So they're an amazing resource. I thought, having gotten my undergraduate education and master's, that I knew how to study. But after meeting with one of these specialists, I learned so many techniques that cut down my studying time, and I was able to do much better in my academics. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let Anj come on and talk about her experience as an international student.
Thanks, Cheyenne, for sharing your experience. My name is Anj Uwimana, and I'm a second-year medical student here at UICOM at the Chicago campus. And I'm also an international student from Rwanda. I have a little bit of a different experience than Cheyenne because I did my undergrad here in the US, and I applied while I was here in the US, and I got accepted and started my medical school last year in August. So my experience, so basically I had some experience being an international student in the US. I didn't have any issue with opening a bank account or trying to understand how being an international student is. However, I feel like my biggest issue was finding the community that I felt that I belonged to, like in medical school. And also, even if I did my undergrad here, it's been a very different experience being an international student in the US, in a US medical school. However, UICOM has a lot of support. Being a big medical school and also a very diverse medical school, I was able to find my community through different student organizations. We have a strong SNMA group and LMSA. Those are student organizations that really are supportive to different people from diverse background, including being an international student. So I feel like, to me, it's been very helpful to transition from being an undergrad and working a couple years here to becoming a medical student. And also, I want to echo to what Cheyenne said in terms of academics. Definitely, before we started, the class ahead of us, who are the third-year medical student, they were second-year medical student. They did a great job at meeting with us, and of course, we met on Zoom because of the pandemic, but they did give us great insight into what the medical school was going to look like, and also to share with us like what different resources to use in medical school. I didn't know how to study at all. I thought that it was going to be as I studied for my undergrad, but talking to upperclassmen was very helpful. I was assigned also a big sister, which was extremely helpful because at every block, I will turn to her and ask her like, what is the best way to study for this block? What is the best way to get in touch with the right resources? That was very helpful to me. And also the Pep Tutor Program is extremely helpful. And the fact that we don't have to pay for it, it's really amazing. And of course, UICOM is very good at helping people to make sure that you succeed when you've been accepted and they want to see you succeeding. So that was very helpful to me as well. And also the learning specialist, it's a very good program that they have because we are different people. I think if I didn't meet with the learning specialist, I didn't know that I'm more of a visual learner, and that was not a thing to me during my undergrad. So definitely I learned that I'm more of a visual learner by working with a learning specialist. And every medical student is different. Some people learn differently than others. And I think just like working with the learning specialist is very helpful to help you study more efficiently and succeed. And also, I think UICOM also is very a warm and welcoming environment in terms of the student body. I feel that even if we started in the pandemic, we've been able to form a strong community among our class. And also we've been very involved in terms of getting involved in different clubs, student organizations, and doing other extracurriculars that we feel that we enjoy doing in addition to doing medical school. And also I want to talk about the services available in terms of the mental health resources. They have plenty of resources if you're having an issue with a mental health or struggling with some other personal circumstances. We have the Residency Center, which is very helpful, especially when you are an international student being away from home. It can be in medical school, it can be intense. So it's really, it's been very helpful to be able to easily access those resources on campus. Another thing that I can say is that the leadership here is very caring. They care about students, and especially for us international students, I don't feel that I'm lost at all. Whenever I reach out to the leadership or somebody, whenever I have an issue, they are really quickly to respond. For example, I traveled to Rwanda this summer, and then I had to come back early on because of the pandemic. But even like coordinating my traveling in the midst of the pandemic and being able to get through all the approval process, it was very quick because I had to get the approval through the Dean of Students. And that was a very quick way. There was no delay, and I felt very supported in the process. So overall, my experience has been great here at UICOM, and I feel that it's definitely a best fit for me being an international student. And I'll be happy to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anj, and thank you so much, Cheyenne. I will have all of our presenters unmute their cameras and come back on stage. So now is the time you might have questions. Maybe we didn't answer all of them. And go ahead and type them into that Q&A feature. So we're going to answer them here and live. So let me just take a look live. So let me just take a look. All right, this one is for us at the admissions office. Since international students might apply later during the admissions process, are they at a disadvantage in terms of chances of getting in? Do you hold a certain amount of spots for international students? So if you recall from earlier in the presentation, we don't have a cap on out-of-state or international students during the admissions process. And we are a rolling admissions college, meaning we pace our offers. Just because you interview in September or October doesn't mean you have a better chance of getting in than someone who's interviewing in, say, January or March. So we like to review all of our applications and pace those offers. So even though we get this question a lot, I'm applying a little bit later, or I know the deadline is approaching, we're reviewing everything holistically. We want to make sure the students that we're admitting are mission aligned. And what does that look like? It's exactly what Dr. Miri mentioned. It's having those experiences, metrics, research, volunteer hours. We want to see how you would be a good fit for us. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So this is for our Office of OIS. Just to clarify, we need to show the full cost of attendance before we get an I-20. Say we are getting a loan, and the loan amount should be the full cost of attendance so we can be approved for an I-20.
That's a great question. You do not need to show availability of funding for the entire duration of the program. What we need to see is availability of funds for the first academic year, right? So the MD program is a 4-year program. We need to see evidence of available funding for the first year. For immigration purposes, when we say funding for the first year, we're talking about tuition and fees, estimated living expenses, and estimated cost of books. So it's more than just tuition and fees. Immigration wants to see that you have those funds available to support yourself for that first year. So no, it is not the full duration of the program. That's a great question.
All right, let's take a look at the Q&A. If you submitted something in the chat, we're just going to be looking at the questions from the Q&A feature. And this next one is for the admissions office again. Are UICOM international students eligible for in-state tuition after establishing Illinois state residency? This is going to be a question for our registrar or financial aid office. And the reason for that is there are requirements for establishing residency in Illinois. Dr. Mary, I don't know if you can expand on that to a certain extent here, at least for the purpose of this question.
I'll be happy to. So as long as you're considered an international student, you will not be eligible to claim Illinois state residency. And so once you're admitted as an international student, you will maintain that status unless something changes. And that you have a different type of visa that allows you to not be considered international. And just to expand that, if you join our program as an out-of-state student, you'll be continued to be considered as an out-of-state student for tuition purposes, even after you complete the first year of medical school. But as Bridget mentioned, you can always reach out to the Office of Registrar and have them reconsider you. But for international students, it is not a change in tuition. Unless there's an official change in their status here with us. And while I'm here, there's one other question that I wanted to answer. The question was for admissions data purposes, is a Black international student considered a URM? And so for us, we will take your race and ethnicity as you indicate it for us on the application. So we won't differentiate based on that. Is the same for us for state of legal residence as well. We will use the data that you provide to us on your AMCAS application.
This one is for Cheyenne. They say, hi, Cheyenne. Is the Big SIB program just for international students or for all students in the medical school?
Yeah, so the Big SIB program is actually open to everyone, every admitted student. And it's a great opportunity, as Ansh and I both took advantage of it. We made a lot of friends with upper year students, and we're still meeting with them. But the amazing experience that we had with them, we also want to make sure that incoming students have the same sort of experience. So that's why we both signed up to be big siblings to new students. And I'm sure the incoming class as well will do the same. But yeah, it's open to every student.
All right, this next question is for the Office of OIS. So in the summer of 2020, the USCIS announced that all international students with F1 and M1 visas attending universities operating remotely due to the pandemic would not be permitted to remain in the US. Though this decision was ultimately reversed, I was wondering if the Office of OIS has any idea on what steps would be taken to ensure the safety of international students in terms of their F1 status?
I can take this one, Kathleen,
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a really unprecedented situation that we were all responding to. And hopefully something like this won't happen again. But it really, I think your question gets back to the advocacy piece that I was talking about. And that's one of the responsibilities and the missions of our office. So when it was the Student and Exchange Visitor Program out of the Department of Homeland Security came out with these adjusted guidelines in terms of maintaining F1 status, UIC, along with many universities across the country, came back and said, well, this really isn't realistic. This isn't possible. We need to, like you said, protect our F1 international students in the same way that we are protecting our other students here in the United States, the US citizens. So they eventually did reverse those guidelines in response to the overwhelm of advocacy from other universities and UIC included. But then what did happen is we did have some adjusted guidelines, and where our office comes in is helping interpret and explain those new guidelines to our community, to the students, to the academic department, saying, you know, this is what we need to do, and we have to step up as a university to make sure our students are able to register appropriately, they have the right kinds of classes. So we did a lot of outreach to our students to find out, where are you going to be for this semester, and to make sure the academic departments know and could provide the appropriate classes for you to maintain status. So you know, we can't guarantee that something like this won't happen again, but what we can guarantee is that our office is well connected and we communicate out what's happening. We work with our departments all across the university to make sure they understand the needs of our international community and to step up as best we can to make sure that everybody is taken care of. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right, our next one is another admissions question. It says, it seems that many applicants have a committee letter from a pre-medical committee. Unfortunately, as a Canadian university graduate, these letters are impossible to attain, as many schools don't have these committees. Is this taken into account when looking at Canadian applicants? I'll remind you once again, we are a holistic admissions office. And I review applications every day, and honestly, I couldn't really tell you the percentage of students or applicants who are applying with committee letters versus individual letters. And that's probably a good sign that I don't notice. I don't notice these overwhelming committee letters coming in as opposed to the individual letters. We're looking for content. So if you have 3 letters from faculty, or if you're a non-traditional student, you've been in the workforce a while, from anyone who supervised your work, we're going to read through them to find out a little bit more about you. And if you have a committee letter, that's great. But we do know that this is, it's not equal access to have a committee at your fingertips, especially if you're an international student. So there's no way we can really count that against you. We're looking at the bulk of that application. All right, so OIS, here's a question for you. So for people currently on F1 visas in the US, are the requirements the same to get the new I-20?
That's a great question. Yeah, so if you're currently in the United States in F1 status, you do have the same requirements. You have to show the same documentation for the I-20. You have the additional requirement of submitting what's called a transfer verification form. Again, upon admission, you'll get the link to that form. It's just 1 page. You fill out the top half. Your current advisor at your current school that holds your F1 status will fill out the bottom half, and that will assist us in transferring your F1 record from your current school over to UIC. But aside from that, all of the other requirements are the same. So that evidence of funding requirement, copy of the passport, those are all going to be the same for you.
And following up, Kathleen, I bet this one is for you. So when showing proof of funds, does the loan have to be from a bank in America, or can it be from a foreign bank?
Yep, so if you're going to be funding your education through a loan, that's just fine. That can be from a US bank or a foreign bank. We just need to see that the loan has been approved to you, and that that loan statement was issued within the last 6 months.
All right, here's another one for OIS. I'm glad you all are here. So the question is, are there any specific scholarships for Canadian citizen applicants? Is line of credit accepted as a liquid source of fund?
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 questions there. The line of credit, well, it depends. The different sources of funding coming from different countries can be accepted maybe from one country, but not from another, depending on kind of how those funds are utilized. I would recommend, if you're considering using a line of credit, maybe send us an email. Again, once you've been admitted, you don't need to send this to us before admission, but maybe send us an email. We can take a look at that for you and see if we could consider that as a liquid source of funds. Typically, a line of credit is not going to be considered liquid, but there are some occasional exceptions to that. So feel free to reach out to us. As far as scholarships are concerned, there are limited scholarships available. We do offer one scholarship through our office. Anna, if you want to jump in and talk a little bit about that scholarship, feel free. We do offer one scholarship from our office each year. But aside from that, scholarships are unfortunately a bit limited. Students do sometimes opt to pursue private scholarships outside of UIC, maybe from organizations tied to your home country, other sources that are offering scholarships. But at UIC, they are a bit limited. But I'll let Anna touch on the scholarship from our office.
The one scholarship out of our office is the Lorette Kirstein Scholarship for International Students. The application period for that is typically in the spring, around March and April, and it's awarded to around 6 students in the amount of usually $4,000, $4,000 to $6,000. So I'll put a link to that scholarship information in the chat, and you can see some of the previous winners have been from the College of Medicine. So definitely something to keep on your radar once you are a current and continuing student at UIC. It's not available during the admission process, but after you are here and enrolled for a continuing student.
And I'm just going to drop in the chat our admissions email. I know that you all have the international email earlier on in the chat. If you have a specific admissions question, maybe about your application, you can feel free to email us there. We have another question for our guests tonight, our OIS office, our Office of International Services. So for students currently on OPT, would they be considered as having a valid F1 status, and would it be possible to transfer the F1 status if the student is admitted and decides to enroll?
Yes, wonderful question. Yes, if you are on OPT, you are still considered to be in F1 status, even though you're maybe not actively a student anymore. OPT is a benefit of F1 status. So you are still considered to be in F1 status. If your OPT will go up until the start of the semester that you'll enroll at UIC, or if it ends within 60 days of when you would start at UIC, then you would be eligible to transfer your F1 status. And actually, I explained that in kind of a weird way. Reach out to us if you're not sure if your OPT will go until you're starting at UIC. There's a couple of variables at play. But yes, OPT is considered F1 status. Typically, it is not a problem at all to transfer that over to UIC.
Great, and we have one for our admissions staff, so I'll take that one. Are there any special considerations when assigning campuses for international students when they are accepted? So if you haven't seen our other webinars or come to one of our open houses, then you might not know that we are a 3-campus College of Medicine. So we have a campus here in Chicago. It's our largest, about 180 students, a campus in Peoria with about 65, and a campus in Rockford with about 55 students. Once you interview and get accepted, and remember, we interview now all the way through February, so don't consider us being silent as a rejection. We are interviewing all the way through February. We have 7,500 applications, so there's a lot to get through between now and then. But once you interview and get accepted, shortly after, usually a few weeks, maybe a month, we'll assign you to a campus. We do prefer to put our international students on our Chicago campus, and that's just because of all of the resources from the physical office. So you saw there the OIS office hours. You can pop in, get assistance, and attend the social activities. So we do prefer to have the students on our Chicago campus. And let's see, do I need to upload my OPT card if the F1 visa I uploaded when I applied in August is no longer valid? Yes, that's something we look for. We want to see current relevant paperwork. So if you've uploaded something that's since expired, that's probably why it's not checked off in your portal. So go ahead and upload that document. If it doesn't get checked off right away, wait about 2-3 days, since we do review all of those documentations by hand. And then you can always send us an email to that email I just dropped in, and you can let us know, hey, I just uploaded my OPT card, which shows my active status.
So Bridget, if I may interject just for a moment, there's a series of questions about the residency application process. And so rather than addressing them one by one, just as a collective, we'll share with you that the class is divided into different advising houses, and Cheyenne and Anj could have talked about their advising house faculty members as well. Part of the residency advising begins there. So there is a acute understanding that the residency advising needs are different for our international students in comparison to the domestic students. So I can't enumerate all of the systems that are in place here right now, but just know that our faculty are aware of that, and the maybe the additional things that you should be thinking about as a international student studying medicine here in the US are things that they will work with you as you're going through the system. So the first part will be the transition, as our current students shared with you, and once you're comfortable and mastering the curriculum, then they'll begin working with you. But that residency preparedness begins very early on in the process for us. Cheyenne and Anj, I don't know if there's anything you can quickly share if you've started that process at all yet or not, being second years.
I will echo what you said about the advising house. They are very helpful in preparing you for the next steps. For example, we have students coming in from upper class, and they share about their experience about their residency application process. But also the college is very good at letting us know what the next stages are. For example, we are going to be ranking our clinical rotations like soon. They are very good at telling us the next steps. And then when it comes to residency applications, we have advisors to help us like narrow down like the specialties we are interested in, and there are help about working on your applications and ERAS and everything that is to come. So I think like we focus on like taking one step at a time, but by the time we are there, they are really prepared to help us.
Yeah, I think Anj summarized it perfectly. The advising house, just a quick summary, is the college is divided, the students are divided into houses. So each house is hosted by a physician advisor. And we have the opportunity to meet up with our house and our physician advisor throughout the year, ask specific questions, and they're basically there to guide us throughout our education. So right now, as second year students, Anj and I will be meeting with our advisors sometime this week, I think. And we'll be talking about how to prepare for clerkships coming up as third year medical students, how to prepare for the board exams, the step one. And then we'll be talking about residencies after that. So like she said, we work one step at a time and try to master what we're working at right now. And then moving forward, there's a ton of support to guide us through the process.
Great. And being conscious of time, I think we can address maybe one or two more questions. This one is for OIS. Does transferring the F1 mean that the student does not need to go to the U.S. consulate and apply for a new F1 visa?
That's typically correct. If you are in the United States in active F1 status, and to clarify my answer to the previous question about transferring if you've been on OPT, as long as you'll be starting at UIC within 5 months of the end date of your OPT, but you've transferred your record within those first 60 days after your OPT ends, then you're eligible. I realize the way I answered that before might have been a bit confusing. But yes, that does mean if you're in the US in active F1 status, you do not need to leave and apply for a new F1 visa. Even if the visa stamp in your passport has expired, but you're maintaining active F1 status in the United States, there is no need to leave to renew that visa.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. If you have specific questions, go ahead and jot down the admissions email. You can ask us about your questions that's geared toward the application. If you have questions for our Office of International Services staff here, you can also email them. If you have questions for our students, you can email us as well, and we'll make sure to get those to our student panel. This will be uploaded in about a week to the channel I posted earlier in the chat. And we look forward to seeing your applications either this cycle or in the future. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.